Every few months, the same argument comes back from the dead, and it is that Unity is finished and Unreal is the future. And then somebody says, no, Unreal is too bloated, and somebody else says Unity betrayed its developers. Somebody then posts a benchmark, somebody else a reaction video, and suddenly being an indie developer feels less like making games and more like choosing a political party. And if you're watching this while trying to decide which engine to use, this video isn't here to convince you that Unity is better or that Unreal is only the serious choice that you can make. It's here to pull you out of what I think is one of the biggest invisible traps in indie game development. A trap that doesn't just waste time, it quietly stops games from ever getting finished. Because the real danger isn't choosing the wrong engine, it's letting the debate itself replace the real progress. Online, these discussions are framed like a battlefield. It's two ideologies, two engines, and two futures, and every update is treated like a weapon. So if you have a pricing change, that is treated like a betrayal to the community, and every other feature comparison is like proof that one side is winning. And that's why it's compelling. Both engines genuinely push towards technology in the future. Unreal is reshaping expectations around lighting, scale, and visuals, and Unity redefines workflows that are made to experiment, and iteration feels a bit more frictionless. And these are all real achievements, but the moment we turn them into sides, something breaks. Because now, instead of asking, what does my game currently need? Developers start asking, which engine should I commit my identity to? And that question is almost impossible to answer honestly. The louder the debate gets, the more it feels like staying neutral means you're uninformed, as if not having a strong opinion means that you haven't cared deeply enough or that you haven't thought deeply enough. In reality, being neutral is often that clarity that you are trying to achieve through all the noise. Away from Reddit threads and YouTube thumbnails, game development is much more quiet than you think. It's you alone starting a half finished mechanic and wondering why it isn't fun yet. It's trying to fit a project into evenings and weekends. It's realizing that an idea sounded smaller in your head than it is in practice. And none of these problems are solved by switching engines. What actually determines the progress that you make is less exciting. How familiar are you with your tools? How fast can you test an idea? And how willing you are to throw something away and try again. I've used Unity for years and I've switched to Unreal later on, and both times there was the same feeling. The sense of starting fresh and finally having access to the right way of doing things. But that feeling fades away really quick. And what remains is all the work. No engine protects you from unclear scoping, no rendering fixes a tweak in the core loop, and no feature set ever replaces understanding what makes your game tick. Here is where the real trap forms. Not when you choose Unity, not when you choose Unreal, but when choosing becomes the project. You stop building systems and start building all the setups. You stop testing mechanics and start watching all the tutorials. And you delay committing to ideas because you're afraid it won't perfectly translate if you switch engines later. It feels really responsible. It feels like planning, but nothing in your project really moves forward. Marketing reinforces this without meaning to. Communities reward certainty and confidence and not being uncertain. Use this engine or fail spreads way faster than, hey, it depends on your goals. And slowly, game development turns into more of consumerism. You learn everything except how your game actually feels to play. Now, let's be honest, sometimes the engine choice really does matter. If your project lives or die by cinematic presentation, massive environments, or cutting edge visuals, Unreal gives you a way better head start that is hard to ignore. If you focus on rapid iteration, smaller scale ideas, and platforms like mobile or VR, Unity can remove a lot of the friction in ways that genuinely matter. But notice the pattern. These decisions come from your project, not from the fear of missing out, not from trends, and not from internet pressure. Most of indie games don't fail because they picked the wrong engine. They fail because they have never stabilized their scope, never tested their ideas early enough, or never reached a point where iteration replaces your ambition. Players don't ask what engines you use, let's be honest. They ask whether your game feels good, and that usually is a question that doesn't get spoken out loud. What really happens below the engine layer is understanding systems, designing feedback, and learning how small changes affect your player behavior, and knowing when something is good enough to ship instead of perfecting it in theory. These skills transfer to every engine, and once you have them, these engines just become another tool, again, instead of destinations. And that's the point where switching engines stops being terrifying, because you're not starting over, you are just understanding a different thing. Ironically, developers who focus less on the engine war often end up being the most flexible. They're not loyal to any tools, they're just loyal to what comes out of it, to the results. And results come from finishing things. When you take a step back, the Unity versus Unreal debate looks different, smaller, and maybe even less urgent. It stops being a question of which engine will define your future, and it starts being a question of what one lets you think clearly today. And that shift is way better than any choosing you can make, because clarity helps your game, and that also gives your project more momentum. Finishing a project teaches us way more than any tutorial you can watch ever will. So, here's what I genuinely like to know. At what point do you think the engine debate started feeling too overwhelming for you? Was it a specific update, a video, a common thread that made you question your direction? Or are you just standing at the start and you're just afraid to commit because you don't want to choose the wrong thing? Let me know in the comments. Try to read them all, and I think a lot of these conversations matter more than the actual discussion around the engine. And if you enjoy these kinds of videos where it's all about understanding why things work and learning by building your own things instead of following tutorials, consider subscribing. And if you want to support what I'm personally working on, you can wishlist my game Trishu Drift on Steam. It's a drifting night game built around risk, kind of like Need for Speed. Wishlisting genuinely helps more than you might think. And with that, stop fighting engine wars, start finishing your games and your projects, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.